It doesn't matter if nobody else in the world knows how good you are. Once you know, that's enough. That's a beautiful place to be. And as I say, there's a sense of that you can really relax into and luxuriate in that beautiful self-knowledge and that beautiful peace. Hello friends, John Dalton here, Further Emergence podcast, where we go into love, consciousness and the mystery. In this episode we're going into the totality of the spiritual life, working in the mystery, being misunderstood, stress and busyness, and people pleasing. Okay, in response to the question I post on Instagram, what's the biggest challenge you're facing in your spiritual life? This person responded, feeling like I need to, in inverted commas, take better care of myself, exercise, socialize, eat wise. So I asked them if they could elaborate on that, and they did. They said, I think it stems from a sense of having, again inverted commas, seen the light in a period of spiritual discovery when I was very in tune with my body and becoming aware of spirit and the interplay of spirit, mind, and body. I was intentional about exercise and diet and mindfulness, and it was one of the healthiest times of my life. Then I had a kid and priorities shifted. Now I struggle to find time to make my own health a priority because taking care of my son is a non-negotiable and it's exhausting. So in my vastly decreased, in brackets, downtime, my energy is low and it's mostly filled with low energy activities, TV, YouTube, Instagram, which makes me feel spiritually awful. But because I've tied taking care of myself, again in inverted commas, physically, to spiritual discovery and awareness, it feels like I have to make my physical health a priority again before I can continue on the spiritual path, which can feel overwhelming when energy is low. And all this becomes a vicious circle. So this is a great question because it kind of highlights lots of different things. The first thing that kind of springs to mind, though, is the spiritual path, the idea of the spiritual path. And I think it's something you have to come to terms with, really, because, you know, it's very common to hear, who used to say it? I think it was Krishnamurti used to say it. The way is a pathless path or something like that. Because the idea of a spiritual path is, certainly for me anyway, was true up until I got enlightened. And then you kind of look back and go, oh, that wasn't a path at all. It looked linear. It looked like it was a path, but it's not really. There is no, you know, I do this thing and then I do this other thing and I'll progress and then I'll get this other lovely insight and it'll be wonderful and things will be great. It doesn't actually go like that. Not in my experience. My experience, it's more that it's all happening all at the same time. So all those dots that go to make up that linear like path or the feeling of a path, they all kind of are like a bunch of well-trained butterflies that disperse, you know, that look like they're in a straight line and they form a path, but then you just have to, you know, wave your hand or something and then they all just disperse and you see that they're all just random points. And that's helpful because it gets rid of this idea of progression and hierarchy and that there are steps. Because my experience of enlightenment was I didn't progress to it. I don't feel like I did. I'm, you know, looked at a certain way I could say I did, but the moment of realization was out of time and space. So being out of time and space, there's no hierarchy to that. It just like Shazam, just kind of happens, you know? So I think letting go of the idea of a path and gives you the space to pull back from your life and kind of go, what's going on here, you know? which is, I mean, I'm not in your life, so I can do that. I could kind of look at it. And it's like you go along in a particular structure and you get all the ducks in a row and you're like, oh, I've got my physical stuff happening. I've got my diet good. I'm not watching the junk TV. I'm not eating the junk food, and it's great. And I feel really pure and I feel really holy. And I'm having all these great insights. And then life, or the mystery, which has a great sense of humor, um, kind of puts you in this situation where you're bound by love to your lovely little son that you just can't help. As you say, it's a non-negotiable. You can't help but give to him. Now you're exhausted. You're not fit anymore. Maybe you put on a bit of weight. You're so exhausted you haven't got time to read the spiritual books anymore or listen to the tapes or anything like that. And anytime you try and meditate, your son, throws soft toys at you or whatever, breaks it all up, And you could kind of think, oh, I've lost it. I've lost the spiritual life. But that you're in it, you're right in it. That's the spiritual life. The whole of life is the spiritual life, The only difference is consciousness, Because you can kind of meet people and go, oh, they're so not into the spiritual life. They just don't get it. They don't get the path. They don't get what I'm on, and what's happening. That doesn't mean they're not in the spiritual life. We're all in the spiritual life, whether we know it or not. So being like in a situation where you don't have the nice feelings of being on the spiritual path, you don't feel holy, you feel like a mess, that's actually, in my experience, a very sacred kind of thing, if you can see it, to see like, oh, geez, I'm just overwhelmed by everything. I used to have all this lovely perspective, and now, I'm just watching whatever Housewives of wherever, and I'm really enjoying it. I don't want to think too much. I don't want to ponder. I don't want to do any of that stuff. It's all part of it, because it's like, it always reminds me of the tide, the tide comes in, the tide goes out, and we just follow along. We get washed over by the oncoming waters, and just when we think, we can't, we'll be just overwhelmed, then suddenly we're like, everything's great. We're just, suddenly the waters recede, and we're like, oh yeah, that's brilliant. It's all clear again. It's all so beautiful, clear, and I understand everything again. And then it'll come again, the next bit will come again. And after a while, you're kind of, oh yeah, this tide going in and out thing, it's kind of nice. I kind of like it. You kind of settle into it. So I know I've got the objectivity that I'm not in your life, not having the soft toys thrown at me when I'm trying to meditate. I'm doing all of that kind of thing. So I have the kind of objectivity to be able to say stuff like that. But I know how hard it is. And I can feel for you, but I can say it's all part of it. It's all good. And whatever little thing, even the fact that you're able to write to me, even the fact that you have time to, and the bandwidth to even to listen to things that I say or people like me, it means it's still working away in there, We often think like we're failing so badly at things, but missing the point that like, you can't feel like you're failing at something unless you have a sense of what it is you're failing against. It's like people who are like, oh, I'm such a terrible person. Well, you're probably not, because if you were really a terrible person, it wouldn't even occur to you. You wouldn't feel bad about it. You'd be just like, I'm having a great time. Who cares about anybody else? So it's kind of the same. You wouldn't have this feeling of like, oh, I'm so far away from something. If you didn't know what that thing was, you can kind of settle into that and just kind of go, this is where I am. This is what's happening. This is what's happening in my life. And see as much as you can, and I know it's hard to see, the big, beautiful movement and sweep of the mystery as it just sort of pokes you in the ribs a bit in a friendly kind of way, and go, okay, you think, you feel like you're doing great in the spiritual life. Well, let me give you this little baby to take care of and see how you go with that. And it's all, it all helps in its own way. If you can kind of settle into that feeling of like, yeah, I don't know how this is helping, but something's at work here. Something's working away inside me. All right, I feel for you, and I think you're doing great. Now, let's have a look at some of the memes on the Further Emergence Instagram feed. The first one I wrote in an attempt to try and describe a little bit what my one-to-one work is like. And it says, working with someone across the vast distance, which is an illusion, we connect in mind and heart and spirit. In that connection, miracles are born. With my eyes closed, this is often how they look to me. And the picture is of someone who's sort of a shape, but it's mostly energy. It's difficult for me to talk about my one-to-one work because it sounds unbelievable, even to me, and I'm the one doing it. And I think that's because it's so beyond what's normal. I mean, I used to joke about it. I used to joke about what I do now. I used to say, I used to talk about it like, these kind of health fairs, natural health fairs, where you got the jamba juice person, and you've got the vitamin person, and you've got the shiatsuing people. And I used to say, oh, what would you do if you were an absent healer? Would you just have an empty booth? And like my best kind of working explanation for how what I do works is quantum entanglement. So there's this thing in quantum physics where they take two particles and they entangle them, and then they can move one of the particles to the other side of the planet. And if they do something to one of these particles, it happens instantaneously to the other particle. I think that's what I do, but I can do it I can do the entanglement bit at a distance. And the more I do it, the better I get at it, and the more amazing and remarkable the results are. Now, from a spiritual kind of point of view, and I've had this perspective much more so than the quantum entanglement thing. The quantum entanglement thing is a kind of an in-existence explanation for what I do, but it's like in the space for the mystery meditations. Okay, I know I'm jumping around here, but in the space for the mystery meditations, everybody comes on the Zoom call and we all start to meditate together, and we go into the mystery together. So we start off and we're all in our different countries. In existence, we're all in our different countries, but then we pull back and then we're all beside each other and we can kind of connect. We connect behind the scenes in a way. And that's kind of what I do in my one-to-one work. It's like we talk with the person, I talk with the person, we know what's going on, and then there's a point in the session where they lie down and I begin to work with their system. And to do that, I sort of pull back from existence and I meet them in the mystery. And really the mystery does most of the work. But then I facilitate that, so I can kind of hold that container. And people can do amazing things, like recover from amazing, or their recoveries can be amazing. The insights they get about themselves, the powerful shifts. And that's because it's happening at such a deep level, and then it kind of percolates up into their system. And the more I do it, the more confidence I have in the mystery and how powerful it is to just sort everything out. Because I often think about people getting their ducks in a row, and like when the ducks are all in a row, or all the tumblers in the lock fall in the right place, then the thing opens. It's kind of like that. And the deepest duck is the mystery. Everything comes out of there. So it's like through working in the mystery, then things can kind of change, and that percolates up into the person's system. So I see people for all sorts of different things, like from very physical problems to very deep spiritual problems, uh, or disharmonies in their system. And amazing things happen, amazing, profound changes. I've had people go from intense electromagnetic sensitivities, for example, where they had to live in the country and they couldn't, you could be around them with a cell phone kind of thing, to they can go into a city now, they can stay in a place where there's Wi-Fi and everything's fine. I've had people who've been in chronic pain go through to no pain at all. So, yeah, hard for me to talk about because it's kind of miraculous, and I'm quite a practical, kind of down to earth kind of person, and it sounds a bit strange, but yeah, it's wonderful, and it's kind of a demonstration to myself of how the existence is not as substantial as it looks, and how through focusing on the mystery and working with people in the mystery, that these wonderful, remarkable things happen that I'm so privileged to be part of. Learn to be okay with people not knowing your side of the story. You've nothing to prove to anyone. Wow. That's lovely to read, but very hard to live. We kind of like, we like to, oh yeah, I've nothing to prove to anyone. But it's when you're in a situation and you can see that someone has decided something about you and it's not true. Like they decide that, oh, that person's a bit cruel. Oh, that person's a bit unkind. That person's a bit mean. And you're like, no, I'm not. I'm very generous. And that you want to kind of go up to them and go, here, look, take my wallet. Look, see how generous I am. Or, no, I'm very kind. Do you know that I volunteer, that I give copiously to charity? Did you know that? We want to get the story straight. We don't want to be misunderstood. It's very intense. So it's quite the spiritual practice to not tell people your side of the story. I mean, not always, of course, if it's very important. If it's it's not like, you're being charged with murder that you didn't commit and you go, no, I'm not gonna testify because it's a spiritual thing with me. I just want to see if I can not tell my side of the story. Tell your side of the story in that case. I'm not talking about that. I'm not about the ordinary stuff. The stuff we get into, the people we meet, and they maybe you think there's a hint that they might have the wrong impression of you, and to not try and give them the right impression, not try and change that, not to let the PR department inside come up and go, hang on a minute now, let me just give you some very good examples of how wonderful I am, because I think you might have not fully got the full extent of my wonderfulness, and I just need to correct you on that. So I've got a small PowerPoint presentation here prepared. I'm joking, but that's the way it is on the inside. That's what we're like. And that's how anxious we get when we get the feeling that somebody maybe has the wrong impression of us, or that we need to tell them our side of the story. And that's the time to let it go if you can. It's not easy. God, I know it's not easy. But to just let it go and to go, I know who I am. I know I'm not unkind. I know I'm not cruel. I know I'm not whatever that person thinks I am. And it's actually, once you get past the uncomfortable bit, it is something to luxuriate in. That this feeling of other people and everything depends on other people and how they view me, and if they don't view me the right way, it's awful. When you can let go of that and you can just kind of go, well, between me and me, I know who I am. And I know that that person's got the wrong end of the stick about me. And while I would like them to have the right end of the stick, I know it doesn't change who I am, and it doesn't change my knowledge of who I am. and I may never meet this person again, and it's okay that they think whatever they think about me, because I know it's not true. I know who I am. There is it's such a relief because there's nothing to prove. Then you kind of are living that thing. There's nothing to prove. I don't have to prove who I am to anybody because I know who I am. And that's what counts, is that I know who I am and that I know, how kind I am, how lovely I am. And it doesn't matter if nobody else in the world knows that. I might sit with that for a minute if it's a new concept. It doesn't matter if nobody else in the world knows how good you are. Once you know, that's enough. That's a beautiful place to be. And as I say, there's a sense of that you can really relax into and luxuriate in that beautiful self-knowledge and that beautiful peace, I think is the word, that comes with just that, just knowing that it's just, and that's enough. And, I would kind of add that, and indirectly then the mystery knows as well, or that goes into that field, and all is well, all truly is well when you can settle into, I know who I am. I know the good that I am at the center. I know I've got my own consciousness, but my fundamental lovely heart is pure and full of love for everybody. And I don't need to convince anybody else of that because I know it's true. And that's a beautiful place to be. And I wish that for everybody. The next one says, you don't have to be busy or stressed to be important. When we read something like this, it's easy to kind of go, oh yeah, of course, you don't have to be stressed or busy to be important. You're important just the way you are. Of course that's true. But it's very subtle. It's very subtle, the feeling of that you have to suffer a bit that to get anything, like that and it comes out in very subtle ways where you find yourself feeling like I should probably answer, this other email, even though I've answered 25 emails already. I'll just do this extra bit. I'll stay a little bit later. I'll work a little bit harder. And then when I come home, it's like, oh, what a day. Ooh, I worked very hard today. And we kind of look around going, anybody appreciating how hard I've worked today? Even if there's nobody around, we do it to ourselves. It's like, okay, I've worked very hard now. I deserve a little treat. I deserve to watch that Netflix show. I deserve to drink that whiskey. I deserve to have that cake. I deserve to buy myself a pair of shoes or whatever it is that is a little treat for you. But God forbid you give yourself the treat before you've worked very hard and earned it. And I'll find with this kind of stuff, when we're kind of hard on ourselves like that, to really come back to what's really going on and come back to babies and how we relate to babies. And would we say the things that we say to ourselves, would we say that to a baby? I don't think we would. It's not like you come across a lovely baby and go, well, how hard did you work? Are you stressed? Are you stressed about all the work that you've been doing? Because if you're not, I'm not going to love you. It doesn't just happen. Love doesn't just grow on trees. It has to be earned. We'd never say that to a child. Jesus, I hope we wouldn't anyway, but I don't think we would. But that's what we say to ourselves. It's like everything has to be earned. Nothing is just given. And yet, like, everything is given to a baby. And you have it in your own experience, like just being around a baby. This love just comes out of you. This, like, something comes out of us. And it's not earned. It's not, none of the things that we say to ourselves, we don't think those things with babies. So I think of that and I kind of go, well, there's a chance that that is the way I am felt about by whatever made me, or whatever, I don't know what it is. It's just a mystery. It's just this big mysterious thing. But perhaps it feels like that about me. Why wouldn't it? Because I've got it in me towards this little creature, and I'm sure I'm more of a little creature to the bigger thing. So why am I in the middle going, no, I have to earn everything. I have to be stressed. I have to be busy. If I'm not busy, I can't just lie on my back in the grass and just soak up the sunshine. God. No, we couldn't do that. We have to work. We have to be busy. Busy, busy, busy. So it's good to kind of remind yourself and just think about babies. I find it very helpful to calm myself down and go, email's not going anywhere. It'll be there in the morning. And you don't need to do any emails to know that everything is set up for you, geared up for you, and loves you. Shocking. The last one says, in order to break the people-pleasing pattern, we must learn how to sit with discomfort instead of reacting to it, including the discomfort of others being unhappy with us, the discomfort of letting others find the solutions to their own problems, the discomfort of having difficult conversations and setting tough boundaries, and the discomfort of realizing others' happiness isn't our responsibility, but our own happiness is. It's easy to say, oh, I don't care what other people think. I don't care what other people think. And we would like to believe that. It's not true, though. I mean, there are degrees to it. Like people you don't know. Yeah, to a degree. But, if you've ever posted something online and somebody makes a comment about it, whether you know them or not, it's still disturbing if what they say you don't like so much. So it's not something that comes naturally. We don't naturally not care what other people think. I don't think anyway. I think you have to kind of work yourself into it. You have to kind of figure it out. Figure out why it doesn't matter to you. And it's a subtle balance of taking the feedback, because you kind of have to take the feedback, because if you just kind of go, I don't care what anyone says, and if your behavior is off, or if there's something that you're doing that's not really in alignment, and it's basically some part of your unconscious is at work and you don't know about it, that's kind of the nature of blind spots. And it's one of the great things about other people is that we can discover what our blind spots are. So you can't just kind of go, I don't care what anybody says. I'm just doing me. We'd like to think that, but it doesn't work like that. You can't just disregard it. You have to kind of listen for the feedback and kind of hear is there some truth in what they're saying. But then also, you have to kind of not let it ruin your day, or not let it move you from what your truth is if what they're saying doesn't resonate with you. So it's a bit boggy. It's a bit of a minefield, but it's easy to get confused with it. And why we care so much is because we're kind of hardwired to care. We're hardwired to not get thrown out of the tribe. Because if we get thrown out of the tribe, we'll probably starve and die. I know we don't live in tribes anymore, but our nervous system doesn't know that. Our nervous system thinks we're still in a tribe. So to not acknowledge that, to not take that into account, it's sort of setting yourself up to have your nervous system bite you because you thought you were bigger than it, and you're not. We're sort of made of our nervous system, and these primal things that we feel like, oh no, I'm too sophisticated. I'm way more sophisticated than that. We're not. Well, we are and we're not. We, like, the thing is to go complete the circle and kind of use your sophistication to handle the difficulty of a nervous system that's wired for survival in an environment that's not the way it was wired for. It's wired to survive in the jungle. We're not in the jungle anymore. We're not under physical threat the way we were when we were in the wild. But our nervous system doesn't know that. Our nervous system thinks we are still in the wild. So we'd be foolish to ignore that and to kind of go, it doesn't make sense what people say about me or how people feel about me, particularly people that you love. They're the worst. They're not the worst. They're the ones that impact us the most. You know, particularly your partner, if your partner, you know, doesn't respond or is upset with you, even though you haven't done anything, you've just stated a boundary maybe, you've just said what you needed to say for yourself, and they're upset with you, that can be really difficult to deal with if you haven't worked through it. And what'll happen is your nervous system or your attachment issues, maybe, if you have difficult attachment issues, will take you over, and you'll just go into, yes, look, take whatever you want. Yes, no boundaries. Forget it. I don't even know why I brought boundaries up. Yeah, forget about that. No. Yeah, you here, take all the money, take all the whatever, you know, whatever it is. And we're kind of afterwards, we're going, why did I do that? And it'll be because we're taken over, you know. Like, if you're not, one way you can know how about your attachment issues is if you've got sort of shaky attachments with your, when you were a baby, what that looks like and as an adult with your partner is, you know, if you're continually going, you okay, everything all right? Because your partner will have kind of looked at you a bit funny, or you'll have interpreted that as, hang on a second, there's something wrong here, they're not completely attached properly here. So it'll take you over, you'll just give in, you'll just give away whatever, you'll give yourself away, and then that turns into resentment, you know, because you've soothed your initial anxiety of, okay, they looked like they were upset with me, and I dealt with that situation. They're no longer upset with me, and now I quietly hate them. But I'm not going to tell them I hate them, because then I will just be feeling, you know, they'll get upset at me again, and I don't like that feeling. So what am I left with? Well, I'm just going to quietly resent them. And resentment, you know, that thing about revenge is like drinking poison and hoping that the other person will die. Is that revenge or is that resentment? I think it's probably resentment, because that's kind of what it's like. You know, I don't think it's either of those. But anyway, it's the same idea. It's like, I'm going to quietly resent the person and feel like that does something to them. It doesn't. They're oblivious. And they're oblivious because you haven't been able to tell them. That's not okay with me. Because they get upset, and as soon as they get upset, you're like, no, stop. Stop being upset. I can't handle you being upset at me. So it's no small thing, particularly in relationships. I mean, that could be, as I say, your love partner, but it also could be your parent, your colleague, your boss, anybody that triggers your attachment issues will bring it up for you in the same way. So yeah, knowing about it is very helpful. That you can begin to figure out ways to soothe yourself and turn down the alarm system on your nervous system when it gets triggered like that. All right, that's all I have for you this time. I trust you're well, trust you're of good cheer, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.